Hi, welcome to this edition of How To Q. My name is Quinn, DIY landscape lighting. I'm going to go over the type of power you're going to use, the type of wire you're going to use or should use, how to connect to that wire, and then finally the types of lights to use. I am adding lights to my front and backyard. Actually, I'm adding more lights to my current setup. I'm going to kill the suspense on the types of lights I'm using. I'm using lights from Garden Reet. The link is down in the description along with a discount code. This is like phase 2 of my lighting project. Phase 1, I actually used Garden Reet. I went out, paid for it. Later on, they reached out to me to see if I wanted to do a video, which I happily did. They're the right price, they're industrial, and they're gonna last a long time. Phase 1 was completed almost 5 years ago, and those lights have been great, so I was happy to add more of their lights to my current system, so that's what I'm doing today. All right, let's talk about power. The hardest part of this project is probably where you're gonna get your power from and how you set that up. I have an outlet on the other side of this wall. It's a bedroom. I tapped into that and created an exterior outlet. There are plenty of videos on how to do it, but definitely use a qualified electrician to do it if you don't feel comfortable with it. So you got a 110 outlet, and then all you have to do is plug a transformer into that outlet. Now, what's a transformer? All this does, this box right here, it's kind of the industrial version of a transformer, is it steps down 110 volts down to about 15 volts, all right? So the wire going through this PVC pipe into the ground is a low voltage 12 gauge wire. I use a Wi-Fi plug here that controls the time it comes on and goes off. Where I'm located is basically halfway between my project. My backyard's that direction, my front yard's that direction. I'm gonna take a wire, I'm gonna go 100 feet of wire that direction, 100 feet of wire this direction. Every project's gonna be different, but just think about that when you're planning yours out. All right, I'm gonna show you how to hook up a transformer now. But first we're going to talk about what kind of transformer you need, what size. I've got 5-watt bulbs. Those well lights are 5 watts. I've got 24 of them. 5 times 24 is 120. You want to add 20% as a safety factor. So I only needed a 150-watt transformer. I've got a 300, so I am fine. All right, this is the transformer that I'm going to hook up for demonstration purposes only. I'm using 12 gauge wire. On the back of it, you will always find on all these transformers, you're going to find a common, a 12 volt, a 15 volt. You have to put one wire, and it doesn't matter which, either one. You put one wire in common, one wire on the 12 volt, or 15 volt for longer runs. If you're doing 2 lines like I've got, you want 2 lines on common, 1 on 12, 1 on 15, and you will be good to go. Now that you got your power running through a 12 gauge line, you need a connector for that. This is the one that came with the Garden Reet lights. I wouldn't use these. I would go out and buy a third-party one. I've got a link for these that I'm using in the description. Pretty much the same theory where you've got a little pin, you punch that pin to make contact with the interior wire, and you cinch both of them down. There is no positive, negative, neutral, so you don't have to worry about which line goes where. That's pretty nice. All right, most of the lights I'm installing are this well light from Garden Reet, very industrial. There is a glass top, a rubber gasket, and a light that you do need to remove this top and install. I'm installing it in the bottom, and there's a little cradle there that allows you to move it left and right to help directionally point it when you install it. All right, now that you've got that back together, it's time to connect that wire to the main line. I want to say there's like 3 or 4 feet of wire from the light that you can use. You need to strip it and then attach it to the top of that connector. Now, again, it doesn't matter which line you connect to which line. It's all the same, which makes it a very easy electrical DIY and very secure. Okay, this is why it shows 12 gauge wire. On the low voltage wire, you will see it marked 12, 14, 16, and of course 10 right there. Here is the equation you need to figure out pretty much the gauge you want. I have 2 runs, so I want to take the run with the most lights on it, which is 15, multiply that times the 5-watt bulbs, times the 100-foot length of wire, I get 7,500. That's why I needed the 12 gauge wire. It's also nice if you want to add lights later to have that extra gauge. All right, now it's time to start digging. One of the things you may not think about but was really helpful in my project is this gardening auger. Really helped me dig the holes. Now let's get digging. All right, digging is by far the hardest part of this project. That auger made it super simple. I'm just replacing a spotlight in the back with one of these new well lights. There was obviously wire there, so I just stripped it, connected the light. You can tell the power is on. No worries about shock just because of the low voltage line. I'm using those waterproof wire connectors to do that. So basically, I went around and dug the hole, or drilled the hole, as you can see, made sure the light fit, and I kept moving. I'm not going to show you every single light that I installed, every single light that I connected. Obviously, a lot of work. So I dig the holes, and then I dig a 6-inch trench to connect those holes. That's obviously where the 12 gauge wire is going to go. In my yard, I had to worry about drip irrigation. That pipe, which is about a 3/4 inch pipe, is about 6 inches below ground. So this is me, especially in front on this fence, navigating around that pipe. Unfortunately, I punctured it, but in my yard, like your yard, if you do have irrigation, that's really what your concern is. You don't really need to be concerned with hitting those deep sewer lines or the deep electrical or gas lines going to your house. Okay, here's a close-up view of that drip line irrigation that I did not successfully navigate around. All right, now once the lights are in, the wire's in, you just gotta connect that wire, which I showed you earlier. I did leave the power on for all of the installation. Of course, you can see that as those lights light up. And at the end, the extra line that I recommend you include with each line, I zip tied just to make it look a little neater. Then it's just time to fill in those trenches and you are good to go. Here is the front of my yard, obviously before the landscape lights were installed. And here's a picture of afterwards. Obviously a huge difference, a huge improvement. And then also in the backyard, I didn't show a lot of that, but here's my backyard lit up. Just looks great. All right, that's the quick and dirty on landscape lighting. Hope you learned something. If you've got any questions, leave them down in the comments. Check out some of my other videos, and I would love for you to subscribe. That's it for this edition of How To Q. We'll see you next time.